House will come to order. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Thursday, May 11th, 2023, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. House file numbers 3288, 1900, and 197.
Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 2, an act relating to employment. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodden, Secretary of the Senate. Richardson moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments to House File 2, and that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 3 members of the House, and that the House requests that a like committee be appointed by the Senate to confer on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses.
The member from Dakota, Representative Richardson, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion, and would like to move forward with the conference committee to iron out the differences in the paid family medical leave bill. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Announcement by the Speaker.
The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File number 2. Richardson, Edelson, and Katiza Watuan.
Conference committee reports on House files.
Conference committee report on House File number 2073, an act relating to higher education. The report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, and the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 2733, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 2 of the 3 members on the part of the House and 3 out of 3 members on the part of the Senate. Pelowski moves that the report of the conference committee on House File number 2073 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the conference committee.
I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, who will explain the report.
Madam Speaker, that is my motion, and I would encourage everyone to support it.
On the motion to adopt the conference committee report, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I would encourage you to not adopt the conference committee report. And as we've seen at ALBA, it's been an incredible pattern emerging over and over and over again that these conference committees this one was composed of 6 people, but it seems that 2 were making all the decisions. It happened over the weekend. I had no information as to what was happening. I had no input into what was in the bill. We just finished our conference committee hearing just a few moments ago, and I learned a ton in that conference committee. But you know, if we're going to do this, members, we should do it in public view. The public should know what's going on when there's offers being traded back and forth. We should have these conversations publicly, and I would ask for a no vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee report, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, House File number 2073, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, to explain the report.
Madam Speaker and members, there is some significant difference in this bill and the bill that left the House chamber. And I'm going to go to those differences first. We concluded in the conference committee report to adopt the Senate position of the North Star Promise. This would allow individuals under a certain income to receive free tuition after Pell scholarships and other items are considered. This is perhaps the major difference in the bill. We continued the House position of fully funding a tuition freeze for the Mid-State system. This is only the 2nd time in the history of the state that we have frozen tuition and paid for it for one section of higher education. We did a number of other things that I know the body would be interested in. The University of Minnesota has $100 million over the biennium. This will allow them to have a 3.5 tuition increase on the main campus in Rochester and a 1% increase in tuition at Morris, Crookston, and Duluth. We fully funded the University of Minnesota's system-wide safety and security for $10 million, adding another $2 million per year to the base. We provide $1 million per year for the tribal colleges. This is a base adjustment. And Madam Speaker, I think I'll close with that and allow discussion and questions.
Discussion to the bill. The member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Well, yes, we had quite an illustrious conference committee just now. We just finished up about 10 minutes ago. And as the chair mentioned, it's $125 million that we're going to be allocating to the University of Minnesota, and they're still going to do a tuition increase. We're going to do free college, so that's going to cost $117 million, free college for anybody with a household adjusted family income of $80,000 or less, and we're still going to have a tuition increase at the University of Minnesota by 3.5% and 1%. So that's at the Twin Cities campus and the Rochester campus, and all the other campuses of the U of M will have a 1% increase. And the only reason that the Min-State system doesn't have a tuition increase is because we froze it. We did pay for that freeze, but they even said that because of their 10-year record of enrollment declines, they are still in a precarious situation, and there'll still be layoffs, and there'll still be early retirements, and there'll still be a lot of other things that you've heard about in your inbox. So we're spending $650 million above base in this biennium, $450 million in the tails, and we still will have tuition increases. We're going to do free college for if you go to Min-State, if you go to the University of Minnesota, or if you go to a tribal college, and we're still going to have a tuition increase. And we're still going to have layoffs. Members, I would encourage you to vote no on this bill. It doesn't make any sense in my very number brain, logical brain. It makes no sense whatsoever how we could spend that much money over base and still end up with tuition increases and layoffs, particularly in the Min-State system. I will end with something good, because I always try to give you something good. And I am very encouraged that we still kept in the support for our 3 tribal colleges. It's $1 million per year for the 3 tribal colleges. And I know months ago now when we talked about this in the Higher Ed Committee, I was told that that was the #1 priority of that committee. I know it was a high priority of the governor, and it apparently was a high priority of the Senate. So that is still in. And I am appreciative of that, because I think it's important that we support those tribal colleges that haven't had O&M support from the state before. And I hope that that will really help those very devastated areas. And you know, I grew up in Bagley, so that's right in the middle of those 3 tribal colleges, right by White Earth and Leech Lake and Red Lake. And it's a very, very poor community. So I'm very supportive of that. I'm very supportive of some other components in here. The dual training grants so the dual training program is something that I worked with then Senator Bonoff. Just for those of you who are brand new, that she's a Democrat. And we worked across the aisle and bicamerally to put together the dual training program. And there's a $8 million allotment for the dual training program, because it's been incredibly successful. And it partners with industry, and it does high-need, high-pay jobs. It's really important for work development. So there are some really good things in here, and I'm really appreciative of. I just cannot do the numbers with the rest of it. How we're spending this much money, we're still getting tuition increases and layoffs in the Min-State system. So members, I'm going to be voting no, and I encourage you to vote no as well. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. Well, this is another move towards socialism right here. Socialized free college. Free college. This aspect of the higher education bill was not heard in House committee. This is the first inkling we've had of it, and now it's something that we have to take an up or down vote on. There's no accountability in this bill to those institutions of higher education to keep them from continuing their spiraling spending on administrative costs. Because the taxpayers will just bail them out, will just pay the tuition for these folks. There'll be they'll be spending money like drunken sailors as if they aren't already. Members, this is just furthering the problem that we've always had with the cost of higher education outpacing inflation by leaps and bounds. It's because of things like the federal government continuing to give grants and loans, so then the higher education institutions just automatically raise tuition because they know they're going to that money's going to keep coming out of the spigot. This is irresponsible. And we talk about the tuition freeze. I don't know if all of you know this, but a tuition freeze is backed up by the taxpayers. We don't just say, hey, freeze your tuition. We pay these institutions money to backfill it. So it's going to be the same taxpayers that are paying for that tuition freeze that are also going to be paying now for free college for 15,000 or so students in the state of Minnesota. There is no empirical evidence that free college means a higher quality of education for more people. I want to read a quote from NPR here on that very subject. Would getting rid of tuition at public colleges and universities by itself give the United States the most educated workforce in the world? Probably not. NPR said that. You know, we discussed a lot in higher ed committee about low enrollment and what to do about low enrollment. But what we didn't look into, really, was why we have low enrollment. Perhaps we have low enrollment. One of the reasons is because people don't think they're getting a good quality education at higher ed institutions. This is not going to help that situation. Members, this is wrong-headed. I'm not saying your heart's not in the right place. And I don't know the numbers. I would have to ask staff. And because this bill, or this conference committee report, was filed last night after most of us had gone to bed, you know, there's been limited time to look through it and actually get numbers to line up. But what I don't know is, of those families that are making under $80,000 right now, how many of them are actually paying for college tuition now? I don't know how many of those people qualify for the state grants and other things that are out there, resources that are out there for these students. So members, this is going to cost money into the future. You are spending us into deficit, not just with this bill, but with your entire budget. Members, free education equals a collective society, not a free one. This is the wrong approach to solving the problem of low enrollment. Sometimes there's a reason for low enrollment and for things changing in an industry. And we have to get to the bottom of that before we just throw more money at it. I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. I enjoyed the committee work in this committee. I'm super, super disappointed with the outcome of this committee, of this conference committee report. And members, I encourage a no vote.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the chair and author yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Quam.
Thank you. What are the impacts to the universities from this tuition program?
Representative Pelowski.
Madam Speaker, Representative Quam, I assume you mean the University of Minnesota?
Representative Quam. Representative Pelowski.
I'm still not clear, Madam Speaker. Representative Quam, you want the tuition impact to the university. The tuition impact to the University of Minnesota would be on the main campus and Rochester campus, a 3.5% increase in tuition, a 1% increase on the Crookston, Morris, and Duluth. There would be no tuition increases in the mid-state system.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was asking for the free tuition that was added on that I don't think was debated or presented or anything in the House, and I haven't seen any fiscal stuff on it.
Representative Pelowski.
Madam Speaker, members, in a conference committee, we often take things from both bodies that are not heard in the other. The impact of this would roughly be about 50,000 students would be eligible for what they now call the North Star Promise or the free college. If you add the Pell to that, maybe another 25%, another 20,000 students. I hope that answers your question.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I was looking at the change in proportionality of in-state versus out-state, because that'll have a cash flow impact on some of the campuses. Effects on full versus part-time participation. I assume there was analysis done before this was implemented so you would understand those impacts. The impacts of on-campus versus off-campus residency, parking, day versus night shifting of what majors are taken, so that if you do an analysis to do a major change with tens of thousands of students enrolling, you'd want to know, is there going to be a shift in the major areas? You know, there are impacts if in-state, out-state, shift in the support structures and loads. So you've got support structures for the students. If you change the population of students, are you going to have to adapt or change or modify those support structures in the universities? Well, there's a lot of stuff that's just in the little amount of time that we had from the report coming out. When you do a major change, you would anticipate there was a study, an analysis, and information of the ripple effects, the second-order effects, so you took care of any issues or prevented issues from happening, and I'm just disappointed there's nothing being presented to us that there is any. I've got nothing that tells me that they actually looked at what this is going to do. And, you know, frankly, that's not what we're here to do, is that, oh, this sounds good. The Senate loves it. We haven't talked about it, but there are ramifications of a major change, and apparently we aren't supposed to know what it is.
Further discussion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm new to the Higher Ed Committee this year, and I have so enjoyed this committee work. And I'm so profoundly disappointed in this conference report. I cannot believe this is the final product that is going to pass into law. So for the public who sees the headline free tuition, I want you to understand, for families that make $79,999 and less, there will be free tuition at the public universities, which is, I think, good for them. But what it's not good for is the state. So this is a cliff. So if you make $1 more, $80,000, you will not be eligible for free tuition. So this is an incentive, members, for families to not earn at their full potential in their years. Most of people who are in their 40s and 50s, when you have kids going to college, those are your highest earning years when you are saving as a family for retirement and doing other things. So this cliff is just a terrible way to do policy. It should have at least been a phase out. But secondly, members, we have the state grant program. So we don't need to create a new program of free tuition when we could have just put more money into the state grant program and increased the eligibility for that. That program works. It's been very successful. There are many students who don't pay any tuition already because of the state grant program and the Pell Grants and the other things. And we should have invested more money in expanding that program, not creating a new program, a new bureaucracy, and not creating this cliff that disincentivizes people to work so that they can instead get their kids free college. It's wrong for our economy, it's wrong for Minnesota families, it's a terrible idea, but I know the headline is, oh, free tuition. Most middle-class families in Minnesota still will not qualify for this, and we are underinvesting in the state grant program that would help those families when really expanding the state grant program could have helped everyone. This is a terrible policy, members, and I'm so disappointed to see this is where we're at. The other thing I was really disappointed to see is that in order to fund this free tuition, we've cut other things that really were good in the House bill. We cut grants to teacher candidates in shortage areas. We cut grants to underrepresented teacher candidates. We cut grants for nursing assistant training programs. Those were programs that we have identified as needs in our state's economy, and those programs are cut. And I'm not sure that was the right trade-off, members. And finally, I'm also struck that we're giving $480,000 in the first 2 years and $220,000 in the second 2 years for free menstrual products. Members, I know that's a need in some areas, but there are other ways to do that without the state putting money into that. And when there are so many other needs for housing and food and other things, we're just creating this new stream of funding that will eventually get more money down the road that is not the best use of tax dollars. And finally, members, and this is a concern I raised in the first iteration of this, when it was on the House floor, I had an amendment that would have had $100,000 for a study for how we can right-size public education in Minnesota. As we have talked about many times, we are in an enrollment decline because of demographic changes in our society and in our state. And that $100,000 study would have really helped us figure out what is the best way to use taxpayer money to get the most value for our higher education system, for our students, and for our state. It was defeated on party lines. But in this bill, there's $250,000 for a study about if there are adverse consequences for students and their families in the admission practices and policies and course offerings. And maybe that needs to be studied too. But members, we are in a crisis of enrollment across our higher ed system, and we need to seriously look at how we can address that for going forward. And all the adjustments in courses in the world for are not going to address this issue. If this study was about adjusting duplicity of courses, duplicate offerings, duplicate programs, ways that we can address what's being offered where in the system so that we don't have so many layers of bureaucracy and things like that, that would be worth our time and money. But to spend $250,000 on this and not be studying how to right-size the system is very disappointing. So members, I'm sad to say that this is not a good bill, because I really enjoyed the committee work, but clearly we really missed the mark on this, and I urge a no vote.
The member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to answer a question that Representative Quam had, and you had asked for the free college, so that's tuition and fees, how many more students? And so we just had the conference committee hearing, and I asked OHE to come up and tell us that. And so it's 15,000 additional students, 15,000, not 50. I think that the chair misspoke, but it's 15,000, and the average grant will be $3,100. Okay, so that's the average grant. And when you can factor in the 25% Pell Match, which is another component of the bill, you might get up to 20,000 students. And in my reading before, those that are on the state grant program currently are, well, it's hard to say. I'm not going to say that because it's graduated, right? So it's based on income. You get more the less income you have. But so that answers that question. And then to Representative Scott's tuition freeze and how much it costs, it's $75 million to do a tuition freeze. So for the taxpayer, it's $75 million to freeze tuition at the Min-State system. So I think those are all really important things to remember. And also, the last thing I'll say is in the Min-State system, there's $50 million one time to kind of bridge, because they've had declining enrollments across their entire system. St. Cloud State and the St. Cloud campuses have been at the top of the list of low enrollment and having enrollment issues. Even with the $50 million on a glide path, they're still going to have layoffs and they're still going to have early retirements and other measures that have to be taken, because it's frankly not enough, because they've had such a massive decline in enrollment in some areas of the Min-State system. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, Representative Quam, and thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Madam Speaker, members, I hope that we learn a lesson here. First of all, it's not free college. We sound like a bunch of knuckleheads when we say that. We're lawmakers. It's not free. The taxpayers will be paying for this. And we continue to do this and educate our students, these high school pages, that it's free college. That doesn't help them. That does the exact opposite of educating them. I don't know why we're doing this. Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to call it free college. My son's here today, a page. Well, now, I don't know if I even want him to go to college for free. First of all, we don't qualify, thanks be to God. But I don't expect you, Representative Pelowski, to pay for my son's college. And Representative O'Neill and Robbins already mentioned it. There's plenty of Pell grants and grants that help those students and families who can't afford it in the first place. But that's not good enough. In the bill, it was good to be on the committee again. I was pleased. I chose the committee because of Representative Pelowski. I admire his tenacity, his experience, his expertise, his leadership, and diplomacy. But as you can see, members on this side are completely flabbergasted and very disappointed with the outcome. I thought that it was going to be, we believed that Representative Pelowski was going to put the rubber to the road and hold the universities accountable for spending. What is it, budgets? What's the saying, Representative Pelowski? What did you say? Budgets not, what was that saying? Anybody? Representative, I won't ask you to yield. What is it? Grab them by the budgets. Thank you, Representative Robbins, and I'm glad you mentioned the menstrual products. I didn't want to talk about that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where do we stop? Should we buy them socks and underwears and hair gel too? So anyway, very disappointed, Representative Pelowski. I think the House got rolled, Madam Speaker. Certainly, kids and families that can't afford college, this body and the Senate has already done years of work to ensure that it's affordable and that there's Pell grants available for students. But again, it was not good enough. We have to give college away. And by gosh, would you members quit calling it free? The media and us folks here on the floor should not be educating our kids and telling them it's free college. That's a lie. It's not free. Aiden and all the other high school kids, you guys will be paying for this. It ain't free. It'll be paying for it in your taxes. Very disappointing. I'm going to have to vote against this. Certainly you enjoyed the committee, but surprise, I think the House got rolled, Madam Speaker, unfortunately. And it's not free. It's very, very costly. Madam Speaker.
Further discussion to the bill. Representative Pelowski.
Madam Speaker, members, just to correct at least one statement, I did say at the beginning of the committee, and it's been said several times, you grab them by the budgets and you don't let go. And this bill grabs them by the budgets. This is the first higher ed bill in a long time where we thoroughly looked at the budgets of both Min-State, the University of Minnesota, and also the grant program as it relates to all of the entities, but including the private colleges. We have in state law a 2/3, 1/3 law that says we should fund 2/3 of higher ed and a student 1/3. We've drifted so far away from that that individuals can no longer afford an education in this state. This bill puts us back on the course to actually obeying the laws that we pass in this state of 2/3, 1/3. Only 1/3 of that education should be funded by a student. We should pick up the rest of it. The other part of this bill addresses something that is unique, and that is a worker shortage, a historic worker shortage. We need skilled workers. To get them, we are going to have individuals of all ages go back to school to get an employable skill set. And I'd argue further that this will also allow high school students to take college credits and not acquire debt, and they can graduate with an employable skill set at 18. This bill does a number of things that are long overdue, and I can only ask you to vote for the next generation. We need them. We need them skilled, and we need them employed.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 62 nays, the bill is passed as amended by conference and its title agreed to. Conference Committee on House Files.
Conference Committee report on House File number 1999, an act relating to state government appropriating money from outdoor heritage. The Conference Committee report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 1999, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommended as follows. The report is signed by 4 of the 5 members on the part of the House and 3 of the 5 members on the part of the Senate. Lillie moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 1999 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie, to the report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion. Appreciate a green vote.
Representative Lillie moves that we adopt the Conference Committee report. Representative Backer to the adoption of the Conference Committee report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I would ask not to adopt this report. It is so important that we carry our process out correctly. On Friday, which this is what I signed up for, I got a text at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're having a Legacy Conference Committee. I get it, that's part of the process. So I drove in from almost South Dakota, across the state, and we sat down, which for the public, right now when you do a conference committee, it's really for the tourists because it's done by the 2 chairs. We didn't have the discussion. You know, I know our chairs don't smoke, so I don't know if they were in the back room with some bubbles or whatever they were. But I mean that seriously. I'm having a little fun. But we as confirmands, the people I represent, and actually on Legacy being the lead, I represent all of the state of Minnesota. There are opinions that we have that count. So we get there, and we had a spirited debate, discussion, and there was some good things said. Really, there was. But the challenge is we passed this bill out of conference committee members with no bill language. We had an outline. I was not supposed to use props on the floor, sorry. But that's all we had. And we know that words matter. Words matter. This is, I hate to use the word sloppy work. We out in the professional world couldn't do that. None of you would want to take your car to a mechanic, and this is how I referred to it on a radio interview. Let's get tires on, let's get tires on, let's get them on real quick. I'm so much in a hurry, let's put one lug nut on. How many of you would want to drive from Minneapolis to South Dakota with one lug nut on each wheel? None of us would want to. I sure want my family to do that. So just that process was so disturbing. We didn't have that bill language, and no, that is not something that's common at all, and if it is, shame on us. This is not the process. We want our younger generation to follow laws and rules. We just got done with higher education. We want to teach them what's right. We want to teach them, and when we, as authorities, say, we'll just pass it through, and by the way, we got the bill language last night about 10, 11. Yeah, it's a pattern. Thank you. It's a crappy pattern. It really is. I'm sorry, members. We should raise ourselves higher. It's just like a tide raises the whole ship. We need to raise the bar. People look to us to do the right thing, not the easy things, like getting up at 5 a.m., driving across from almost South Dakota over to this end of the state. That's not necessarily easy, but that's the right thing to do. And I do appreciate working with the chair, but on this one, you got it wrong. The whole committee got it wrong. Only 2 of us said, nope, we're not going to do it, because guess what? We could have met. I heard higher education met right before this. We could have met on Monday, yesterday, or right before here, do a discussion and so forth and do it right, because words matter. This pattern is lazy, folks, and I'm really concerned, Madam Speaker, that this is going to continue. Minnesotans deserve us to do our work, and we didn't do our work here. So I would ask all members to vote no on the adoption of this for those obvious reasons. Thank you, members.
Members, just want to remind folks we're on the adoption of the conference committee report, not on passage of the bill. The member from Stearns, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I'm grateful that we were able to hear the concerns brought forth by the minority through Representative Backer. The fact that there was not bill language, I do not feel that it is appropriate that we would be adopting this conference committee. And with that, Madam Speaker, I request a roll call.
Representative Demuth requests a roll call. Sorry, it's allergies. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion on the adoption of the report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on adoption. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 62 noes, the motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, House Bill number 1999, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie, to explain the report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This really is a good bill, and we've had a lot of opportunities to look at it, and I think we all can be really proud of the work that's in this bill, and it's really for a much better Minnesota all over. Just to refresh your memory, in 2008, the voters approved a constitutional amendment to tax themselves, and that's adds up to about $820 million in this biennium, and we're able to do some amazing work all over Minnesota. And so in the Lessard-Sams area, and I just really want to start out by thanking the citizens that are on that committee and do that work, and the legislators. I believe Representative Heitzman was on there, so we'll see how he votes later. And staff, there's 44 projects that were picked. Just keep this in mind, 121,000 acres are protected and restored in Minnesota. Thousands of trees are planted, lakes, streams, and all these investments in public land. Keep in mind, this is for all of us. This isn't, someone that might be lucky enough to live on a lake or something. This is for all of us. We can get on this land, every one of us, all Minnesotans. There's amazing investments in the clean water area this bill that passed. 59 projects cleaning up watersheds all over the state of Minnesota. There's low interest loans if you're a farmer, working with farmers to get them to maybe change some of their practices and to work on that. There's also a goal in here. We set a goal to make sure that to try to achieve a goal by 2050 that our water is swimmable, fishable, and drinkable. I mean, that's when you think of Minnesota, how important our waters are, and this bill does that. It moves us towards these goals, which is better for all of us. In the parks and trails space, there's parks and trails all over, every one of your districts. I've been on a lot of them, and I hear a lot of them. I watch your tweets, I watch your stuff. You'll say, you'll be at ribbon cuttings and different things. There's trails all over, every one of your districts, all over the state of Minnesota. I don't know if you were outside on Saturday or this weekend rather, and we finally had one of those nice spring days. Tell me those trails aren't popular. And this bill goes after that and invests in these parks and trails. So, and this is an amazing bill in that space. The ICANN program is funded through the DNR, getting people that have never had the opportunity to get out and maybe get in a canoe. Maybe didn't have a family member that could teach them how to fish or canoe or to get on the water. How amazing is that? In the arts and cultural space, there's amazing things. And this comes out of conference committee, pretty close to where it was. But there's amazing things, the traditional things that we funded, like zoos and libraries, every one of your districts. We try to keep Erdahl's books out of them, but maybe we should do what Florida did, maybe, and ban a book or an author. No. It's amazing with the libraries. Zoos all over Minnesota. Duluth Aquarium, right here in St. Paul. Just amazing, the Science Museum and other things. There's AMPers in this bill that's put together with both, all over the state, radio channels, NPR, public TV, Historical Society. Tell me they don't have a project in one of your districts. And that's funded through this bill. Amazing work. And thousands of art grants are going out all over. And I imagine you might know somebody that's received an art grant in your district. That's done through this work. That's what the voters proved in Minnesota, and you can really be proud of it. And we're able to do this all together. But I guess that's kind of, I'm telling you more, I'm backing up and telling about the bill. And I think what happened in conference committee, there's some things that are a little different, like every bill. And maybe, I understand there might be some questions, but I think this is a good bill for Minnesota. This serves all Minnesotans, everyone. Our new Minnesotans, our old Minnesotans, and gives them access. And so I think we can really be proud of this work. And I'd be shocked if there's in a full green board like Bobby Gunther used to get. I'll stand for questions, Madam Speaker.
The member from Crow Wing, Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Speaker. And I do have some questions, but number one, I just want to start out by saying nobody doubts the heart of Chair Lillie. This is a committee that I think is near and dear to many of us, myself I'm including in that. And Chair Lillie, I really enjoyed your committee, and thank you for that. The Legacy Bill has so many really terrific things that we could talk about for quite some time, and I understand we kind of weave through in and out the projects and all of the different things that it does through the debate and the discussion. There are some things, though, that, of course, are missing, and I wanted to quickly highlight those. As the Legacy Bill left the floor just a couple of weeks ago, we had adopted a few amendments, two amendments that I I offered and that were taken up, and really thankful for that. Number one was an amendment that prohibited dollars from the arts and cultural heritage side of the spending in the legacy bill from going towards projects that are promoting acts of domestic terrorism. And I'm thankful that that amendment was taken up, although I see coming back, and Chair Lillie, if I missed it in the bill, it only dropped like Representative Backer mentioned, I think, late last night, 10 o'clock. And if I'm wrong on that, you correct the record. But I don't believe that that amendment that was passed out in our language here in the House was included. And I really would have liked to have seen that come through, and I'm not entirely sure why. The other one was an amendment that prohibited arts and cultural heritage funds, again, from being awarded to organizations who have had civil or criminal sexual harassment or sexual assault judgments against them. And that was stripped also in conference committee. And in case someone's been living under a rock, Republicans are in the minority in both the House and Senate. And Democrats have a majority position in both those chambers, and of course also had that on the conference committee, and the decision to remove that is concerning to me, both those amendments. And since I wasn't on the conference committee, if it would be okay, Madam Speaker, I'd ask Representative Backer to yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative Backer, you were on the conference committee. It sounds like there might have been a bit of a different process than what we've seen in years past, bienniums past. Maybe you could elaborate if you were a part of that conversation, if there was any conversation on these provisions that were stripped out and that are no longer in the bill. If you could speak to that at all, I would really appreciate that.
Representative Backer.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I was not part of the process at all because when we got there, we didn't have the bill language there specifically. I did ask, I did have a question, and I asked the chair her on the Senate, why that was removed, because this is so important, and I don't know if I got a really clear answer. I think that question would be better to Chair Lillie. That's what I would recommend.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative Lillie, maybe you heard my question, and if you would yield, Representative Lillie.
He will yield. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Chair. Same question, Representative Lillie. I really am tracking these things closely, and I'll just quickly elaborate a little bit, especially on this issue of sexual harassment. I think in a debate this last week, Representative Herr mentioned that there had been service in your history, Representative Herr, on a Human Rights Commission. And I too have that experience. I was serving on a Human Rights Commission in Crow Wing County. In fact, was the chair of the Crow Wing County Human Rights Commission. This issue of sexual harassment in the workplace and other places is really near and dear to my heart. And there was a specific instance and it was a discussion in the Legacy Committee. It was something I think needed to be discussed. And that's something that hits home for me. Something that, as the father of 3 daughters, I want to make sure that I do everything I can to make sure that they are safe, wherever they are, especially in the workplace, as I mentioned. And if we're promoting, we're actually sending taxpayer dollars, legacy dollars, to organizations that have individuals running them with a history of being a bad actor in this subject area. This amendment dealt with that, and that was pulled out in conference committee, Chair Lillie. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd sure appreciate it if you could help me understand why that wasn't included, how that got stripped out.
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Heitzman. So there's basically 2 questions there. One on the terrorism language, and certainly terrorism and the promotion of terrorism which I'm certain you already know is illegal. And so we looked at it, we tried to figure out how to do it, and it was not workable at this point. But just so members know, just in all clearness, that it's against the law already, so it's illegal.
Representative Heinzman.
I'm sorry, Madam
Representative
Speaker.
Lillie.
I didn't answer the second question.
Oh, Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Heitzman, I'm sorry, and then the second question on sexual harassment. I mean, to be totally clear, that's awful. I mean, it's just simply, it's awful, and the Senate did not take the language, and we talked about it, and it was not taken. So the House position was heard.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Chair Lillie. I'm unfortunately continuing to be extremely disappointed that the Senate, it sounds like, in conference committee was opposed to this language, and specifically Democrats in the Senate, because Republicans offered the amendment on the Senate side as well, and it was rejected. Which is, to me, again, shocking that Democrats would reject language that would have prohibited these folks that are coming to the legacy or coming to the process asking for legacy dollars, taxpayer dollars, that have a history of sexual harassment. And it's such a bizarre situation. So I wish there was more to that, Representative Lillie. I'm extremely frustrated that this isn't something that we could address. And to the suggestion that it's something that's already illegal, well, I honestly really disagree. There have been examples, Chair Lillie, of projects being funded in the arts and cultural heritage category that have depicted acts of domestic terrorism. There was even a video game, very specifically, that was developed with Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund money that allowed those that played this game to blow up pipelines. I just don't think that's something that most Minnesotans would support. In fact, I think very few would support that. And so I don't think that suggesting that that's already illegal is the case. I think since we already have a track record of those kinds of things being funded, this amendment was critical that it go on to this bill. And I'm disappointed that Democrats stripped that out in conference committee. And then additionally, this issue of sexual harassment not being addressed, this is abhorrent, folks. What are we doing, members, if we can't say to a group that comes to the state of Minnesota through this process and say, we're not going to be taking and supporting those groups that have a history, a track record of this kind of behavior? Democrats took that out of the bill, stripped it out in conference committee. Unbelievable. Well, it doesn't sound like this is something that I can work on today, but I guarantee you, Chair Lillie, and to those of you that are still listening, and those of you at home, I will be working on this. This isn't going away. This isn't right, and this has to be fixed. And if Democrats won't do it, I'll certainly be there going forward, working on making sure that it does.
Further discussion. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Hussein.
Thank you, Chair. And this bill is a great bill. And I want to thank Chair Lillie for his dedication and hard working. Not only that, we are investing all Minnesota, whether it's the Clearwater, Park and Rec. We're spending $818 million so our water could be drinkable, fishable, swimmable, so we can have our generation to dedicate for 2040. We spent a lot of time, and yes, we did have a great time in a legacy. And we agree a lot of things together and to work for the people of Minnesota. I am honored to be part of that legacy, and I have learned a lot. We did not leave no one behind. We try to take care of all Minnesota, and we know that Minnesota has a rich history for cultural when it comes to it. We address to take care for every community so that they can celebrate, and everyone's history deserves to be told and to celebrate for their cultural. And that's what we did, and that's what legacy is. And this is a great bill. We are educated for arts. We invest in libraries. We are trying to take care of our youth, our young generations, our water, our trees. And thank you for your dedication and for your hard work in putting this great bill together. I will urge all my colleagues and friends for both sides, please. Let's not look for the little things, but look for the bigger picture for this bill, and let's vote for all green.
Further discussion of the Conference Committee report on House File 1999. I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair Lillie, thank you. First committee, for me, the other members of the committee, for me it was fun. I learned a lot about Minnesota. I learned a lot about the Legacy Fund. I learned a lot about what 3/8 of a cent really matter, what it makes a difference in our state. I represent an area that benefits a lot from this bill. It's important to the constituents that I represent that we have trails so everyone can come up and use them, so we can use them. It's important that we have clean water. It's something that we pride ourselves on, and we have mining, we have all kinds of extraction, and we still have the cleanest water in Minnesota. The other day, my dog fell in the Mississippi River. Took 2 days to clean her to get that smell off. I don't know how y'all live in this, but I couldn't do it. So this is something that this legacy bill made a difference to me, looking at where does this money go and how does it get there? And it's not perfect. You know, y'all are standing up saying it's the best in the world. It's like, that's great, but it's not perfect. But you know what? At some point, I learned in my political life, sometimes you got to just look at what's the positive and try to find what's good. The Board of Water and Soil Resources, they benefit. My district has a lot of good things they use that for. Outdoor Heritage Fund. These are things that people in northern Minnesota are used to, and the folks that come up to use it and see it, they like it. Some of the, one of the things I was really impressed with was putting funds away for promoting the Ojibwe language. At age 16, I started going up to Lac La Croix, Ontario, and I interacted with the natives all the time, and they would always speak at the table in their tongue, and I had no idea what they were saying, but when they started laughing, I always knew they were talking about me, you know? So you pick up on them inflections. But I found it such a fascinating language, and then those old guides started passing away, and the younger ones were it was missing. But they're trying to bring it back, and I see now in our state, we're gonna try to bring it back. I encourage people to learn the language. It's a pretty cool language. I wish I was younger and I could learn it better. But this bill as a whole does benefit the people in my district. It benefits my district, so I will be supporting it. Thank you again, Chair Lillie, and thank you, committee members.
Further discussion. I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And just want to, in a way, echo some of the things that Representative Scarborough just said. This isn't a perfect bill. I don't know that I've ever seen a perfect bill here. Oh, maybe one that I did once. But not a perfect bill. There are things in here as Representative Heinzman was pointing out, that I wish had been included in the bill. And maybe in a future time they will be. But I will support this bill for what's in it, not for what's out of it. And there are, as Representative Lillie pointed out, a lot of good things in this bill, things that the people of Minnesota expect and intend to see. It was mentioned that this bill passed and created in 2008, that the people voted to increase their own taxes. But another important point, they did it during a recession. So during a recession, the people of Minnesota voted to increase their own taxes to pay for things that they value, like the outdoors, like water, like history and culture, and parks and trails, because it was important to them. And this bill still is important. The most recent poll I saw showed that 75% of the people of Minnesota support the legacy amendment and the provisions such as are in this bill. And so I will happily vote green on this today and urge others to do so as well. Thank you.
Further discussion of the Conference Committee report on House File 1990. I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And, first of all, I also enjoyed working on the committee. Really got to know Representative Shah and Representative Hussein and her and folks that I really never worked with before and so forth. And then, of course, sharing the corner of the third floor with the chair. Your CA is always good to go to find the rest of the story, by the way, okay? But no, it was really enjoyable to work with. And there is a lot of good things in this bill. I do believe back many years ago when this was passed, Minnesotans really wanted to focus on parks and trails, libraries, historical societies, and so forth. I think that's the nut and bolts of the bill, of legacy. But the concern that I have is, I agree with Representative Erdahl, there's never going to be a perfect bill. The concern I have is the process that we saw. We don't have to get it right all the time, but on this one, we have to get it right. I do not want to be driving down I-94 with one lug nut on each rim because I won't make it to Representative O'Neill's district because that's where I always stop to fill up in gas in her district. But I think it's the bad process. I think we set bad precedents. And we need to raise the tide of that whole ship. Also, what sets bad precedents is the sexual harassment being pulled out, that statement. I don't have 3 daughters, I have 1 daughter, and I want her to be respected. I know every father and mother, but especially fathers, we have a special relationship with our daughters. It's a different relationship than mom and daughter. We are that provider, that protector. We're there for them. And so pulling that out, I really believe that sets a very bad precedent for the state because words matter. Our actions matter and so forth. So, and also very concerning, the Children's Museum. I do want to mention that. The Senate actually, in my opinion, had better language than the House, especially for the museums in greater Minnesota because the staff is less and to have that direct appropriation. We know we need strong outlets for our children. I have had the opportunity to visit the one in Fergus Falls, and before representing Fergus Falls, I thought, wow, I never knew this resource was here. And that resource is so vital for our younger generation. So I'm very concerned about that language that was agreed upon between the 2 chairs. You know, I won't say in the dark of the nights in a smoky room, maybe in a room full of bubbles, because children love bubbles, okay? They do, I know that. Though on the serious note, that's a quite concerning about what happened to the Children's Museum. They are a wonderful asset. We know the St. Paul one is used heavily here in the metro area. So with those reasons, especially because of the process, I will be voting no on this bill. Even though I know Chair Lillie, just take a deep breath, Chair Lillie, okay? I do respect you, and we have a very good relationship. So with that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion to the Conference Committee report on House File 1999. I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Cha.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak to the Arts, Culture, and Heritage and Language Preservation of the Legacy Committee. As a new American, the preservation of culture, heritage, languages is very important to me and the new immigrants, and those are a part of this country. And so the piece that we have set aside to preserve the cultural language of indigenous people and immigrants of this nation is very important to me and my community and to me as a legislator. So I want to thank Chair Lillie and the committee members. I want to thank my friends across the aisle, Backer, Heinzman, Scraba, Farr, for being on this committee and the friendships we've made and the trips and the fishing trips you've promised to take me on, all right? And so I want to thank you for that. But I want to speak to the libraries, the zoo, the museums, and the parks. As a new refugee and immigrant to America, we didn't have much resources in the 80s. And so for someone like me who didn't have much resources, the only place where I could get books, libraries, and have access to microfiche and possibly a word processor was at the libraries. And so as these new immigrant refugee students, that was the only place where we could get those kind of resources. So that's why libraries are important to these communities and communities like mine and to people like me. Because of these investments, it's allowed me to have a different trajectory, to allow me to have a better outcome, which allowed me to be here with all of you today. The zoo, the museums, the parks, we use those recreational facilities to the best of its utilities because we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have much. We had the parks. Our entertainment for our community and for my family was going to the zoo every year, to the conservatory, going to the museum with my children, the downtown museum. Those things are important to beginning families like myself. The Historical Society, clean water. Clean water is important to me. I live in Woodbury where PFAS has tanked over 38% of our wells in East Metro. Of all 18 wells, 7 of them are under operation. Clean water is important to all living things, not only to me and my children, but to the animals, the plants, the environment. Thank you, Chair Lillie, for the great job you've done on this chair. Yes, it's not perfect, but we have to start somewhere, and we're starting somewhere today. Thank you.
Further discussion to the Conference Committee report on House File 1999. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and thank you for this discussion. And I actually appreciate it because, for example, on the questioning the grants, yeah, there was a problem years ago, and just so everybody knows, we give away thousands of grants, so it's highly likely that one could fall short. A couple years ago, there was one in the Lizard Sam space up in northern Minnesota. Unfortunately, someone was given money, I think, to their brother-in-law or something, and quite honestly, they didn't get money for a long time. Maybe, I think they took a while to reestablish themselves. So everybody knows this money is important and sacred, and I take it very serious. And we're looking at it. We've added all everybody. We added a few things this year through conference committee, to be quite honest. And but we looked at them, and I'm really proud to say they're really good additions, and I think we're going to be able to do some really great work. So I'm glad that comes up, because that's a question I ask every day, because quite honestly, we don't really want to be on the news. You know, this is kind of sacred money, I think, so we want to do good work. We don't want to have someone fall short. There's amazing things in this bill, and I don't want to go through it again, but I just want to show a book that we did last year, and this goes out to all the libraries and kids. The Historical Society put it together. This is a book that was done by Legacy. You can get this and hand it out to people in your district. It's in your, should be in all your libraries, and this was done by Legacy. And but there's endless things, but none of this gets done without us. I'm going to thank staff again, so I'm sorry to keep going, but I feel sorry for you. I'm going to say this again. You guys don't have the best staff. We do. Mary Davis, I don't know if she's delivering a baby today, but she was working right up to the very end. Janelle Taylor, Brad Hagemeyer, Helen Roberts, and certainly Amy over there. She did a little bit of too good of research, I think, for Josh and Backer, but she did a good job. And and thanks to Mike Molzon and Madison Priestley, my LA. But anyways, you know, we're lucky to be in this space. My committee members were amazing, and you know, Vice Chair Hussein did a great job and kept us moving and challenged us. Representative Backer, you honestly, I appreciate serving with you. You are, you know, a good member, and I was impressed. You know, we did move fast in this. He's not wrong, but I think it's, in the end, it's very good work. I think it's something that we can be proud of. Hats off to him. You know, he's way over in South Dakota, and I talked to him on the phone, and he comes flying in for a hearing. And he did ask to be virtual, and we couldn't pull it off, but he drove in, and that's a testament to him and the hard work. Representative Finke did a great job on the committee. Thank you for serving, and great questions all session. Representative Vang, and thank you, Chair Vang, and Chair Lee was on the committee. Chair Herr, also great job, and Representative Cha, just an amazing voice to have on our team. Representative Farr, where are you? I can't remember where you sit. There you are. Sorry, buddy. And Representative Heitzman also was on there, and he was definitely paying attention, as you saw today. And Representative Scraba, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being on. I think there really is good work. I'm sorry to kind of drop the plow a little bit here, but please look at the bill. And if you can, I said this before, and if you can't win an election on this stuff, there's something in here for everybody, and it's really good work for the state of Minnesota. And we're so lucky to have these funds. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be chair, but it's really all of our bill. It's not mine. It's work that we're doing. And this bill really leans into the new Minnesota. It really goes after getting money to people that haven't had a voice at the table. And I think it's a great bill that we can all be proud of. And I think you could probably vote green today. So thank you for your time.
The clerk will take the roll on repassage of Conference Committee Report from House File 1999. The clerk will close the roll. There being 101 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to. Announcements by the Speaker.
A message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence to the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House File number 24.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk, and they're available online. If there's no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objections, the motions prevail. Announcements. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, we passed the higher education bill today, which, by the way, was a record funding for higher education in the history of Minnesota. So it's appropriate that I announce to you today the new Min State Chancellor, Scott Olson, and his wife, Kelly. He was appointed yesterday by the Min State trustees, and he will be taking over. And Mr. Speaker and members, you should also remember him as the president of Winona State University and the co-chair of the Minnesota House of Representatives mini-session that occurred on October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2019, which was the first mini-session in 22 years for the House of Representatives. So I introduce the new Chancellor of the Min State System, Scott Olson.
Members, please welcome Chancellor Olson to the House chamber. Are there any further announcements? I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, May 10th, 2023.
Representative Long moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, May 10th, 2023.